Now, the first thing I want to talk about, and we've talked about this in prior meetings, and a few of you here today, I see some familiar names here of people who have jumped in on these meetings, is one of the first things is you really have to figure out what kind of board is right for you. And I know that I say this again and again, but it truly is the largest step that you all can take in this journey. And figuring it out sometimes can take time. And I know there's a few of you on the call who've actually worked with me to figure out what is the right board. You've really got to think of a combination of things. You know, what's my experience? What's my background? What's my expertise? But then you have to wrap all of that up, and it has to fit into the types of boards that you want to join. So maybe you've worked for a lot of startups, but your goal is to join, you know, a Fortune 100. Well, that's great, but those things don't really match up, right, in terms of experience. So think about where is your fit, where do you think you should be going, and then start to narrow those down. So if you weren't in prior meetings, it's not a problem. Have a look at the email that Linda sent out yesterday. You know, try to think of one or more, try to think of a board that would be a good fit for you. And then one of the things I want you all to do is to look at the backgrounds of those board members. Again, a quick side story. Somebody came to me once and said, hey, I've been on VC boards. I worked at a VC. I've been an investor in these amazing startups. I want to be on the board of Nike. It's just not a good fit. Okay, so look at the background of the board members of Nike. You've got Tim Cook, right? Apple CEO. You've got other CEOs of other Fortune 100 companies. So that's what they're looking for. So it's a great way, if you look at the backgrounds of the people on the types of boards that you want to join, it's a very, very quick and easy way to say, you know, is that my background? Do I have that type of background? And start to make that fit. Okay. So, and again, are there any observations that you've seen? And then what do you bring to these boards? I need 3 things that you bring to the board. Okay. And when you think about the 3 things you bring to the board, it has to be the 3 things that boards want you to do, right? It can't just be, well, I'm really good at, you know, leading people. I managed 400 people. How many people are you going to be managing on a board? None. There's no one to manage. What I need you to do is mentor a CEO. I need you to know about CEO succession. I need you, right? There are other things that are relatable that boards do. And there are some great things that you've done in your history. Try and find the connection. Try and find how they fit. So finding that fit is really important. I also sent, did everyone see the attributes of highly effective board members? Let me just put that into the chat here as well so everyone can see that. If you take a minute, you want to just have a quick look at it. The highly effective board members. When you read over these attributes, I'm hoping that all of you are going to be very familiar with that. You're going to read them and say, yes, this is me. These are the things that I've done in my career. What I also want you to think of is every interaction that you have with people. And if you're talking about your board career, they're going to want to see these attributes. They're going to want to see them in the way that you know, speak, how you communicate, even how you write an email, right? And then, of course, how you show up. Do you show up on time, prepared? These are what board members do. This is what we want out of our board members. So just things to remember there is that these attributes are usually what sets board members from non-board members, right? Everybody has experience. I said this to someone the other day. They said, well, you know, I've got a unique experience. I said, I'm sorry, but you haven't. There's hundreds of COOs. There's hundreds of CEOs. There's hundreds of people who've been in M&A. You're different because you as a person, also your relationships and your reputation, right? So relationships, reputation, and attributes, these are all things that you just sort of acquire in your career. It's not based on experience or, you know, anything to do with the work that you've done. So getting onto a board, you need to showcase all of these things. Okay, now I'm going to hand this over to some of the people that have been in the sessions before. Who would like to jump in and talk to any of these points we talked to, and this is good for everyone to hear as well. Would anyone like to jump in? I know Laura, Veronique, you've been in our meetings before. I believe Gail has as well. Who would like to jump in and talk about their what they bring to boards and any skills backgrounds and the type of boards they want to join? I pick on you, Laura. I know you've talked about it in the past. Go on.
I'm happy to do it.
Go for it.
I actually did my homework
Great.
because I'm one of those kind, and I'm stuck. So I need a little bit of guidance. Okay, I have found the company, the founder, and all of that, but I can't seem to figure out who's on their board. But we'll come back to that. So y'all that don't know me, I'm Laura Patterson. I'm the president of Vision Edge Marketing here in Austin, Texas. And I like to think that I match up with the attributes of the that you provided in the list. My I think specialty is in customer centricity and growth strategies. I know there's a lot of people who do that, but that is what I think I bring to the table. I am looking for a paid board opportunity for a mid-market manufacturing or technology company that is either privately held, PE backed, or a founder led. And in our last conversation together, thank you again, Naomi, for doing this. After that, I went and made a list of potential companies. And one in particular is Eagle Eye Networks, because they are located here in Austin. I figured might as well farm my backyard. They are founder led. Dean Draco is the CEO. He does not live in Austin. He lives in California. I have like 90 people that I know who are connected to him, but I am not connected to him. But getting connected to him would not be hard, but I don't want to do that until I know what it is I'm doing. And he has also two other companies. So maybe if I wasn't also in manufacturing. So if that Eagle Eye Networks wasn't a good fit, I thought, well, maybe I might be a potential consideration for one of his other companies. He's been at the helm of these companies a long time. So I'm sure he is probably the chairman of the board, but I don't know that for a fact. So that's what I know about where I am.
Love
Dean
it.
Pico is his name, and Eagle Eye Networks is the company. They do cloud video surveillance. I figure if we're moving into that world, and it's in technology, it's in IT, so it seems like it would be a good fit.
I love it. I love it. And just a couple of things as you were talking. First of all, absolutely fine that you haven't, you haven't you don't have a complete path yet. That's okay. In fact, the journey that you're on right now, maybe if you go and speak to that company and they say, actually, we're looking for board members who do this or that, you might say, well, yeah, actually, I do that. So you might actually figure it out as you go. So it's absolutely fine that you're still working it out. I'd say probably most of my clients are like that. They haven't got it completely fixed, but they have a direction. So I think that's fine. Secondly, I think it's great that you found a company that you like and you've been looking up the people. This happens a lot with private companies. No board listed on their website. Did you see anybody on their LinkedIn? Anyone listed as an advisory board member or anything like
No,
that?
but I saw a lot of people I know that are connected to that person, and some of them I know extraordinarily well. So
Mm,
reaching out to them to find out what they
right.
know would be not very difficult. But I don't want to do any outreach until I have good instructions and directions from you, Naomi. So
Okay.
this is what you do next. Frame it something like this, and then I'll be more
Perfect.
than happy to do that.
This is a
I just don't
great,
want
this
to blow it if I know I don't want to do something
You
stupid.
won't. You won't. Let me tell you one piece of advice, everybody. Everyone listening, this is a very good piece of advice. And I've told lots of people this advice, and a lot of them have got onto boards as a result. There is no board seat available. Just remember that. You have to go get it. Okay, no one's going to come to you with a piece of paper and say, hey, Laura, there's this board seat and we'd like you to sit in it, da, da, da. No, you have to hustle. You have to go in saying, there is no board seat, but I'm going to get one, right? There's nothing advertised. It's not like a job search. And Linda mentioned this in her intro, right? We talk about this all the time. Everything you've ever known about trying to find a job, forget about it. there isn't necessarily a board seat on an advisory board or a board. Sometimes you can just add people, right? And when they meet you, Laura, and they go, this is, oh my gosh, this is exactly who we need, because you come with a, hey, these are the things that I can do for you. They'll say, well, we'd love to have you on our board, right? So there isn't, I mean, there are some times when there are board seats available and they are advertised, but I want you all to get that out of your head. So don't limit yourselves to say, well, I only will go after the board seats that I know are available. I want you to forget that and just go after every single opportunity. It's your opportunity to get the door open and get in there and tell them what you can do for them. So have that in mind. Also, technology, another piece of advice that springs to mind when it comes to technology, you do not have to be a technology person to sit on a board of a technology company, right? In fact, they don't want technology people on a technology board, right? Because they know they've invented the technology. They're the ones with the ideas. What do they need? They need a board for the things they don't know a lot about. So it could be growth strategy, it can be scaling a business, it can be, right, and all the things that you're really good at. So I want you to think about what is the balance. So if you look at the CEO's background, I would also look at who they are. And I'm sure you're all very familiar. If there's a CEO with a sales background, or the CEO with a finance background, or the CEO with an engineering background, you need to present and communicate with them in a different way. Okay. So if they're a CEO with a sales background, you need to talk about money and how much money you're going to make and the growth and all these transformation things. If it's engineering, you might have to get a bit technical, right? Onto, how you can, in the detail about what you can do for them. So think about the communication style. I forget what it is, but there's a chart. I'll try and get it and I'll send it to Linda and she can forward it around to you all. But there's a chart that talks about different communication styles. Some people are direct, that'd be me. Some people are more about the data and the numbers. So don't come to me with a problem. You need to come with the data and we need to discuss it. There are other people where, they need to think about it for long. They need to be creative. And so there's kind of, I think it's 4 personality types. And you guys probably already know it, but think about how you're going to approach the business based on that as well. So keep that in mind.
I do know that Dina is an electrical engineer. He's an engineer, and his career has come up through engineering ranks. And he spent a good portion of his early part of his career at Barracuda Networks. So,
okay.
Yes, so
okay.
pretty
Is
much
he young? Is he under 40, over 40? What's his?
I would say he's probably over 40, based on what I have, based on his experience and the fact that he's on the board of Barracuda Networks as well. And he's been in his own companies at least 20 years. So I would put him in the over 40 category, maybe even over 50.
Okay. And he's got some experience too. So that's great. Yeah. So if you think about this particular scenario, what I would do is I would take more of a consultative approach. So I would definitely want to try and get a meeting with that CEO and make it more, it shouldn't be, hey, I want to meet with you to talk about being on your board, but it should be more, hey, I mean, you're going to have to bring something into the mix, but maybe it's insights on the industry. Maybe it's, I'd really like to make a connection with a peer in the industry. I'm very close to the work that you do, and I'd like to share some insights about growth and about marketing or whatever it might be. But I would definitely get in the room with him. You need to find out what this business needs so that you can come back with what you will provide. So this could be, and Laura, I would think about this as like a 6 month to a year, work that you're going to do. Listen, going after one company is fine. I think it's okay. It just can take time. Don't,
it doesn't have to be that one. I was just doing my homework.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think it's great. Just take it slow in terms of have maybe a first meeting and do a lot of the talking. Have him do a lot of the talking in the meeting.
Yeah.
So, ask him about his business, what's going on, what's happening. Do you have a board? How does this all work? And again, showcase your experience, showcase your attributes. I worked with some of the largest headhunters in the world at a prior company, And whenever I would ask them, because they were my clients, whenever I would ask them, why did that particular board member get chosen? It was down to two people. And they said, yeah, they were exactly the same. They had the same experience. They said, but one of them was the right fit. Okay. So CEOs look for people that will be a good fit. And what that means is it's those attributes, right? But it's also, are you going to work well with us all here on the board? And that doesn't mean, are we all going to work in the same way, right? We're all going to vote the same. And that's not what it means. It just means, are you going to be able to disagree agreeably, right? Are you going to be able to be independent? There's a number of things, but certainly they look for fit. So I would say if you do show up to that meeting, you presenting yourself and your fit, I think is really, really important. So that's great. That's really good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you need to find out a little bit more about the company and see where you might be a good connection. I'll give you all a couple of little anecdotal stories. I was working with a client of mine, and she said, hey, I want to join this board, but and she was so, I don't think I'll get it, and I said, why is that? She said, well, I know who else is applying for it. I said, let's not worry about them. Let's put them to one side. I said, tell me about the company. Let's look at it. And I learned, I knew a lot about her because she was my client, and I looked at the website and I said, oh, there's a CEO, and she just so happened to be female. And all her board members were male, and all her senior advisors were male, and things like that. I said, how old were you when you started your company? Because she had started her company. And she said, oh, I was, 35 or whatever. And I said, how old's this CEO? She said, oh, she's 35 or 36. And I went, I think you got a very good chance of becoming more of like a mentor and presenting yourself as someone who's actually walked in her shoes, and someone who can be an empathetic mentor and leader, to kind of be her advisor on the side. And she didn't just push this, and she didn't say anything about it being female. She just said, hey, I started my business around the same age. These are some of the challenges I faced. I think I can be someone you can trust. She got the board seat. Right? She talked about other things. It wasn't just that, but she had built her own business. She had sold into a similar type of company, actually. And we put in the cover letter, we put how it was important that she'd had a different percent, like she had seen things differently. She'd not done exactly the same thing. Because again, it's like someone from Pepsi joining the board of Coca-Cola, right? I don't want to know what Pepsi's doing. I'm trying to compete with them, right? They're not going to bring anything new to the table, right? I want somebody who's run Goldman Sachs to join my board, because they're the people that are thinking differently. They're seeing things from a different perspective. So, and I think there is somebody from Goldman Sachs on the Pepsi board, or one of them anyway. But you see my point. Like sometimes there's a desire to find things that are different, but you really have to hone in. If you do have an application to join a board, or you want to approach someone, you've got to think, you put yourself in the shoes of the CEO. What do I need? Who do I need to advise me? I don't want someone who's like me. I want someone who's not like me, right? Who gives me that diverse kind of opinion. Would anyone else like to share the types of boards that they're thinking about joining? And if you haven't done the homework and all these things, that's fine. Just or you can put in the chat if there's something that you've and then we're going to go through the value proposition pitch.
I can share.
Sure.
So Naomi helped me recently polish my board profile. And I was emailing her that I feel like so much more confident in it after working on it. I had this draft like circling around and around, and it needed like an outside perspective to kind of push it to a point where I felt good about it. And then I've spent the time since then thinking about my kind of target board seat. And my name's Alice Jeannie. I live in Chicago, and I was most recently chief legal officer of an HR and payroll software company by the name of Paycor. The company sold 2 months ago to our second largest competitor. I am looking to serve on the board of a private equity backed or privately held company in the technology, software, e-commerce, or fintech space, and to leverage my experience with IPOs and big corporate transactions to help a company in its growth phase as it's looking to either go public, prepare for a sale, or some other strategic significant transaction.
Yeah, what was great about Alice was this kind of, taking a company from private to public. I'm sure you can imagine. I mean, just being in the company is one thing, but actually sitting in Alice's seat, which was she was creating the governance framework, she was creating a board, rewriting, the laws and the regulations in the business, making sure operations were ready for this IPO. That's a really, really unique experience. And so a lot of people who are on boards that want to go public, they bring people like Alice on because she can envision what's about to happen and help and advise, right? The CEO if they've never done it before. So that's why Alice has chosen that route, because it's something she has a deep experience in. And I mean from a firsthand, right? She's seen things firsthand, and it's pretty well sought after. But it's very niche, right? It's a niche area. But actually, believe it or not, that makes it easier for you, because now you're just going after those private companies that want to go public, or like you said, a private equity firm. So great. Thank you for sharing that. Right. Let's dive in today to the elevator pitch, or the sort of value proposition pitch. So, Alice has a bio, but actually what's really important for her is actually her value proposition speech or pitch, just like she did just now, right? Telling people about what kind of a board member she is and what she's doing. Because she's going to see and meet people more than this bio, right? This bio isn't shared, it's only given to certain people. So what really needs to happen, all of you need to have a value proposition pitch ready to go at all times. So what is your value prop? Okay. I want you all to think about the types of boards that you want to join. So in Alice's case, it was landing a board seat of a company that wants to IPO. In Laura's case, it was a privately held company technology, and ones that are looking for high growth, right? I know a couple of the others here were also private companies. I think someone was in manufacturing of a particular size. And then what you need to do is you need to really figure out what those board members do. So you're different. Why are you different? And then you need to think about, what is the situation you're even getting yourself into, right? Like, what do these people need right now? These people need a parachute, right? That's all they need. They've got everything else that they need. We don't need that. Hopefully none of us are flying in a plane right now or jumping out of planes at this minute. But what is the situation that you're getting yourself into? What is it that they need? And what do you provide? So are you going to help them land safely in wherever it is that they need to go? So again, Alice was using your example because you just said it, but Alice is saying, I can be there and I can help you get through the IPO, and I can, Wall Street, or you'll look good if I'm on your board or I'm there, guiding you through it. When Wall Street go to evaluate the IPO, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what I do in this situation. You have to think about the company and the board, and you have to think about what you provide. Okay. It's not a one-way street. And the other thing to be very clear is, don't just show up and tell the person everything about you. You want to tell them about what you do on a board. There are lots and lots of things that we've done in our careers. Not all of them will be relevant. So you have to think about that. So what is the elevator pitch? Well, I actually have a preferred pitch, which is a 5-second pitch. So you don't have to think about it now or make it up now. I'm not going to put anyone here on the spot, but I would like you all to revisit your 5-second elevator pitch. What is it that you say when you shake hands with someone for the first time? And it could be anyone, it could be, a next door neighbor or something. Fine. You might have more of an informal version for people that might not understand your industry or they might not know who you are. But what's your 5-second elevator pitch for someone that you meet when you're in a professional setting? In 5 seconds, I'm either interested in you or not. And it's amazing how the first 5 seconds can open the door to a board conversation. So for those of you who are on nonprofit boards, and I'm sure a lot of you have been or are, you could start incorporating that into your 5-second elevator pitch. So you could say, hi, my name is, and I'm, an executive in the so-and-so industry, and I serve on boards. And I'm a board member. By adding in, and I'm a board member and I serve on boards to the back end of that 5 seconds, you have just opened up a conversation with every single person that you meet to talk about boards. And watch, some people might go, oh, that's great, and they move on. And some people might say, oh, the boards, that's interesting. Tell me about the boards. I want to hear about that. And now suddenly that's the conversation you're having, which is the conversation you all want to have, right? You don't need to talk about your COO career or your executive career all the time. You could talk about the board. So just a slight change in the first 5 seconds that you meet someone by saying, I'm a COO or I'm an executive at such and such company, and I also serve on boards. If you say that to every single person that you meet for the next 2 to 3 months, watch how that changes. Wendy, you said you met a CEO earlier today and you wish you'd heard something I said. Tell us about that. What happened?
Hey, I'm in a coffee shop, so I hope you guys can hear me okay.
Yes,
Can
we
you
can,
before?
yes.
Okay, great. So really quick, she has 4 different business lines, and we were sitting there brainstorming and going through what she could do and which one she should do next. And Naomi, I would have approached the conversation completely different after hearing the things that you're saying. Just being a little bit more, I would say, like a little bit more of a sounding board and talking a little less. And also I would have brought some expertise that I didn't even think about to the table that I just didn't think about in the moment because I really didn't do a ton of research. So I appreciate this because it's helping me just think differently about some of the people I'm meeting with.
Yeah, I think, a great place to do research is LinkedIn. Have a look at the people that you have in common. That's always a good way of breaking the ice. And it's actually a good way of building trust. So if I see someone and they have a couple of, connections, I'll say, oh, it looks like we have a few connections. Immediately that draws a trust element there between you and the person you've really never met before. So that's a nice way of doing it. Or you can see they went to school, and sometimes I bypass their experience and I just go down to where were they educated, where do they go to school, what are their volunteer work, what's their achievements, something like that. But definitely, yeah. And actually, so let's talk about this. And this is sort of a little bit about when you're going to say your elevator pitch. It's exactly in the scenario that Wendy, you just had, which is an elevator pitch is not for you to stand up in front of 100 people with a PowerPoint, right? It's actually just a one-to-one meeting. That's all that I'm talking about here. Okay. Your board career should not be discussed at, you shouldn't be at some event with 30 people, right? Going along and talking to it's fine. You can do that. But the one-to-one meetings is where a lot of great things happen. So think about re-engaging with your network or building a new one. Just like you've got a bunch of people here on the meeting, you've got great networks like leadHERship and others that are around. So, join these networks and meet people one-to-one. That's the value. And of course, you want to meet people at the right level, which is so important. So what is an elevator pitch? This is my version of it. There's plenty of different versions of it, but this is my version for a board role, right? You're thinking about boards. Now, does it have to have, and I have 4 parts. Do you have to say all 4 parts? No. But if you know the answer to all 4 parts, you're going to be 10 steps ahead of everyone. So let's go through it. Strong opener, 5-second elevator pitch. That's the 5-second, right? We'll go through these in more depth. 3 things that you bring to boards. you trust me, no one can bring more than 3 things at the subject matter expertise level, right? You can enhance on other things. What are you going to do? You can do that during the board experience section. So tell me about your board experience. Alice, I hope you don't mind, because I know you pretty well, but she served on nonprofit boards, but actually the real experience she's had has been at these public and these private companies where she's been working side by side with board members and working with committee members and getting the bylaws set up and doing the governance of the board, right? So you have to really think deeply, what is relevant board experience that I can talk about? It's not just sitting on a board. And then finally, what are your values? Remember I said about board members, it's about fit, those attributes. So on the attributes page, it's all about values. You need to know what your values are. Do you need to tell everybody every time? No. But if I got a call from a recruiter and they said, hey, I've got a board seat, I need to talk to you about it, I would have all these 4 things ready to go like this, and I would probably say all 4. So all 4 are important. They get used all the time. No, the 5-second elevator pitch, that you'll use every day. So, all right, let's talk about the 5-second elevator pitch. What can be in it? You can talk about your number of years of experience. That's fine. But what do you want them to remember? Think about that. What do you want them to know about you? You don't have to know everything, but what do you want them to know about you? So the board member thing, you've got to write that down. So if any of you have served on a nonprofit board, you should be saying, well, I've spent 20 years in the manufacturing industry and I'm a COO and I also serve on boards. Great. It's interesting enough, right? You don't need to tell everybody everything in the first 5 seconds, just something that's really interesting. Piece of advice: do not use over the top language. I talk about this a lot. You don't have to go over the top, exaggerating what you do. If you've been a COO, you've been a COO. I mean, unless it was a COO of one person company, yourself, right? That's different from being a COO of a Fortune 100. So you might want to give them a bit of a spec, right? So I'm a CEO, COO, or CEO of a mid-cap company or something like that, or a startup. It's fine. But don't use over the top language. I am the best at, I am known for, my God, who knows you? I don't know anyone who knows you, and I've not heard of anyone speaking about you, unless you're a celebrity, right? Unless you're a celebrity, in which case I should know you. So just watch the language you use. Remember the attributes. Humble confidence was one of the attributes of board members. You don't need to exaggerate. Your achievements speak for themselves, ladies, in everything that you've done. Some of you have been running companies, running big businesses, leading huge divisions. That's all we need to know. You need to be able to speak it. So this opener needs to be something that can be spoken. I have a lot of my clients who go, right, I'm going to write it down. And I go, okay, let's write it down. Write down your 5-second elevator pitch. And then they write it down. I'm like, this reads like a book. You're never going to say this. So write it as if you're going to say it. So it's got to be something that feels comfortable, rings very quickly. And if anyone wants to start writing their own in the chat, just to kind of push it out there and say, hey, this is my 5-second elevator pitch, happy to look at it. And why don't you tell them what you're looking for, right? You can do that in the first 5 seconds. Hey, I'm a partner at Deloitte, or I'm a partner at XYZ firm. I also serve on boards, and and this year I'm focused on building my corporate board career. Who are you? Right? Get it out there. There's no harm in saying that.
I think it's also helpful to give perhaps a little bit of color around your board service. So if you said, I'm currently the CEO of a mid-cap company in leadership development. I've served on 5 boards over the last decade. Each of those boards were in the nonprofit space. So this year, I'd like to translate all of that experience into a for-profit board with a mid-cap company in the healthcare industry or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. That's exactly what I'm thinking. That's exactly where you should be. Be bold. and again, it's got to feel right. It's got to ring off. It's got to feel you got to feel comfortable with it. Yeah, it helps. Alice, exactly. Practice with someone. Well, what, if you get in the chat, maybe some of you could partner up with some of the members here. But yeah, definitely. And the other one is using board language. So, if you do say anything about boards, maybe you could say, I've served on 3 boards and led compensation committees and led nomination committees and governance and whatever the other terms are.
Or you could even say led the turnaround of 2 major nonprofit boards, and you could name them Susan G. Komen and Muscular Dystrophy or something, right? So they know this is not, a very small hometown nonprofit. These are major nonprofit institutions, global brands, and you help lead a turnaround for them. That's like I'm making this up entirely. But as you said, Naomi, if you can speak to what you did at that board or what committees you served on in those boards, that helps, because I will tell you, I serve on 2 boards right now that are paid board positions. And it was because of my work on nonprofit boards that I was able to negotiate the paid board position.
I talk a lot about how to choose the right nonprofit, because some nonprofits you mentioned, and I'm not going to say there are bad and good nonprofits. It's not about that. It's about, is it good for your career, right? And some of those small local nonprofits, they may not have the kind of reach. And I know a lot of you have looked your information up and you sit on big companies, global companies. You want to be around the nonprofit boards where you're going to be networking with people like you, right? Not just, the local community HOA board, right? Right. Melissa, would you mind unmuting and just doing yours? I thought this was a really good one.
Yeah, it is good.
Thank you. Yeah. So for me, I'm a finance and strategy leader. I've spent most of my career in Fortune 500 companies in the retail and consumer goods industries. I'm also an angel investor, really passionate about investing in women and underrepresented founders. And I serve on several boards and committees, 2 advisory boards, Athena Music and Wellness Therapy in the mental health space, and the University of New Haven's Women in Leadership program. I also serve on the 50/50 Women on Boards New York City Leadership Committee.
Wonderful. That's great. If I were to cut that down to 5 seconds, I would just do what you said there, but a little bit elaborated on. I love it. I think it's great. Do you see how now what I'm now remembering of her is, well, the Fortune 500. So I'm thinking big companies, and then I'm thinking board, and then obviously that retail stuck in my mind as well. So, what do we want people to remember? What do we want them to walk away with? And what type of a conversation do we want to start having with people? But the minute you start telling people that you serve on multiple boards, or you have served on boards, you open up that conversation. So I'll give you all a challenge to do that for the next 2 to 3 months, or even just the next month, and watch how your conversations change with people. All right, let's go to part 2. Part 2 of the elevator pitch. You need to know what are the 3 things that you bring to boards. You need to know these. It needs to be very specific to those boards. So if it's private equity, you need to be talking the private equity language. Okay. If it's publicly traded companies, you need to be talking their language. And it's a startup. A startup really needs someone who, a lot of the time, if it's, early relationships, high growth, they don't need governance. They'll look at you and go, governance? What do we need? We don't need a governance for that, right? So, but if you went to a publicly traded company, you would need to know a lot about that. So who's your audience? What are the 3 things? Now, I'll give you a little bit of a guide. I used to work with a lot of businesses that worked with boards of directors when I worked at a company called BoardX for about 12 years. And that's where a lot of my experience comes from. And when I would meet with my clients, I would often ask them and say, what do you look for in your board members? Because it's kind of part of my job, right? And these 3 things came up again and again and again. It is growth, it is transformation, and it's risk. These are the three things that corporate boards care about. And you can call them different things. Like you can have a different name for it, change. You can talk about risk mitigation. You can, whatever you want to do. But I would advise you to think about your role on a board in each of these three buckets. And if you look at them and you go, well, I'm all about risk. I'm sorry, you need to have a growth story and you need to have a transformation story. And if you're all about transformation, but no growth, well, actually, that doesn't really make any sense because most of the time, transformation is with a growth mindset, right? These three things kind of come together. And if you think you've done one and not the other, think again. Because I can promise you, if any of you have been involved in strategic planning, which I hope you have, because I think baseline boards need people who know how to, do strategic planning. But of course, you would be overseeing the strategic plan. You've had these three things in mind at all times. So think about what you bring to boards. I'd like you to categorize your own experience into these three sections. So a quick story for you. And again, it hurts sometimes because things that you've done in your career may not translate to the board. I had a client of mine who said, I've written a book. And I'm sure if anyone here has written a book, you know how long it takes, how much money it takes, how much effort, and then probably not a lot of reward, right? I don't know if any of you are bestsellers, but I'm actually writing a book at the moment, and I can tell you mine will not be a bestseller, but it takes a lot of time and effort, right? And she said, I really want to put my board in my bio. I want to talk about my book. Sorry, I want to talk about my book in my bio. And I said, your book is called, I think it was like High Heels and Coffee, and it was about, women in business or something like that, networking. I said, this book has nothing to do with boards, definitely not the boards you want to join. And it's just not relevant. So we had this sort of back and forth on how we were going to put in the bio. And eventually I said, you can't have it in there. It doesn't work, right? So it pains me and it pains my clients to have to remove things, but it's the same with your elevator pitch. You can't tell everybody everything. You've done
And
this.
it goes back to what do you want them to remember, right? You don't want them to remember a catchy title of a book that has nothing to do with their true, deep, rich, meaningful experience that they bring to the board.
Exactly. And you don't have long. You don't have a long time, okay? You're not stuck on a desert island with these people with nothing else to do. You are in a situation where you have 30 minutes on a call, 5 seconds to get them interested, and then maybe a minute or two to tell them about what you do on boards. So it's not long. Okay. So biggest piece of advice to you all is present your relevant experience. And you might need to dig deep into this as well. It's not always obvious. I mean, Linda did a really good 5-second pitch there, but she talked about boards and committees. Melissa did as well, boards and committees. So, think about some of the things that you did on those boards that are relevant as well. So tie it in, or I don't know, it could be like in the case of Alice, she's helped companies go public. So what's that a growth? What's that a transformation? And what kind of a risk story is that? Okay, so we're through the things we've prepared so far. 5-second pitch. We've wowed them. They go, oh, tell me more about this boards. Oh, well, let me talk about that. Here are the types of boards that I'm targeting. Here are the 3 things that I bring to boards. I work across growth, transformation, and risk. Growth example, XYZ. Transformation example, blah, blah, blah. And I've been in, I've worked in enterprise risk, or I've, done whatever at so-and-so company. These are the things that I specialize in when I serve on boards. That's another thing, another piece of advice I'll give you all. You might be like, well, I'm not on a board right now. It's always aspirational. Okay, you're always looking forward. You shouldn't be looking back. So if you've never served on a board or you're not on a board now, it does not make a difference. You should always be thinking ahead. So it's a little bit like me saying, if anyone here has never skied on snow before, You've watched a number of movies with people skiing. You know the equipment. You've seen it a million times. You've probably read books with people who have been skiing. So you can kind of guess what's going on, you know, and if you're not, maybe you're not, I'm not very good balancing, so I probably wouldn't be that good, but I think I could do I've heard of a bunny slope. I know there's a bunny, right? You know the language, you've learned the language, even if you've never been. So if I were to tell you, okay, in winter, I'm going to go skiing, I could describe to you, even if I've never been, I could describe to you where I would probably enjoy the trip and where I probably wouldn't, right? So I would probably be doing the après ski and having a drink at the bar or sitting in the hot tub, right? That'd be better for me than being on skis or whatever the story is. But you kind of have to do the same thing with your board career. You have to say, as a board director, I think about, this is how I think. This is the way I think. They want to learn, they want to know how you think. So I think about growth. I think about transformation and risk. And, you know, from my days at XYZ firm, we went through this particular transformation, or, you know, we did a lot of risk assessment. Okay, let's move on. We've got 2 more sections. Board experience, right? If you are going to start talking about your board experience, so again, I'm sure none of you have been in many situations where you've had to talk about your board experience. So this might be a little bit new to you all. So again, you got to really think about, where was your experience? What did you do? I want you to do it in this order. If you've been on a corporate board, talk about that first. So here's my corporate board experience, blah, 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 blah. I served on the board of da, 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 and I served on the committees, and I served for this amount of time. If you have never been on a corporate board, any strategic advisory boards of corporations, not nonprofits, corporations, that comes next. Third, this is always a surprise to everyone. Have you presented to corporate boards? Have you been in the boardroom? So Alice and I, when we were working together, she said, well, I've been on these nonprofit boards. I said, tell me about the corporate board stuff. She went, well, of course, loads of that. You know, I advise the board every day during the IPO process, right? That's really interesting. I want to know about that. So as somebody who's bringing a corporate board member on, I feel very confident in someone who has been so close to a corporate board. It's very important. And then the final one is not-for-profit boards. Why? Because the not-for-profit board, it is great experience, but it's a different board meeting and it's a different perspective. And so it sort of falls a little bit. What I would do is, if you have corporate board or advisory board, or you've presented to boards, I would spend 80% of my time talking about that. And then I would spend 20% saying, oh, and by the way, I have also, because boards do like it that you're involved in community, right? They like that. So I've also been involved in community and civic boards. I'm very passionate about this cause or that or whatever, or I'm in marketing. I'm part of the American Marketing Association. I sit on their board and I serve on the investment committee, or I serve on the finance committee, or right. Don't talk about fundraising. Everybody fundraises. That's a sort of given. Tell us about the things that are different. And Linda earlier on said, tell us about, you know, explain what you've done that's not like, that's not typical. So if 2 nonprofits merged and you were part of that, or right, like think about that. That can be very important. So this is how you should describe and talk about your experience. Talk about what you learned. Okay, we've got 7 minutes remaining. What is your elevator pitch on the values? What are you going to talk about? So for those of you who need a little refresher, I strongly encourage you to look up the duty of care, the duty of loyalty. I should say duty of care, not value of care, sorry. So duty of care, duty of loyalty, it's also duty of obedience. These are the 3 sort of values that board members stand by. Don't state the obvious. Don't say things like, as a board member, I value integrity. I really hope you've got high integrity as a board member. That's kind of like baseline stuff. So you don't need to state that sort of thing. But I would say, you know, as a board director, I value the duty of care, and talk about your attributes. Well, what do you value, right? What are your values? So have a real good think about it. And values, by the way, also sort of tie into kind of corporate culture. And no board is perfect, right? So I had a client once who said, I don't want any boardroom dynamics. Boardroom dynamics translated is drama in the boardroom, basically, right? People infighting and all these things. And I said, well, I hate to say it, you're never going to find that. That's just people are people, right? And so there's always going to be something. Can you get a board where there's a great group and everyone's sort of operating at their max and you feel like you have people you can trust? Yes. But will there be a few dynamics? Yes, there always will. So you have to be a little bit careful. But here are just some to help you kind of get your ideas around it. So, and this was just alphabetized. So I just took I to Z or whatever it was. But passion for the business, pride, respect for people, sense of urgency. I have a lot of people who I work with who come out of financial services. And the biggest complaint that they've made when they join boards is that nothing happens here. Nothing's going on, right? Because we all know you come out of Citigroup or you come out of JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs. I mean, things just move at top speed there. Decisions get made and they move. You get into a board and, maybe the company's a little slower and it drives them nuts. The values you have are going to help you find the right fit. So think about what they are and think about how that works. Okay, I'm sure there are a lot more that you're thinking about, but yeah, definitely look up the duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience. Just have a refresh of what they are. They're kind of like the baseline things that board members look for, but other things here as well. Values diversity of all kinds. Does the company have a good work-life balance? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that's what I'm looking for, but these are things you should be looking out for when you are interviewing, right? And you're interviewing for board seats, or like Laura was saying earlier, she's going to start talking to a company. She's probably going to do a little bit of research into them, right? And see what their values are as a business. Okay, so just a quick one to end the meeting today. When you think about sorry, I think there's a bit of noise here in the background. When you think about your own sort of personal pitch, I don't want you to think about it as some sort of very rehearsed planning, right? That you sort of stand up and you say your pitch. I want you to know all these things, these 4 parts. I want you to know them so that in any event, and I had a client once who said she was on a tour bus in Vermont in the summer, and someone else on the tour bus just so happened to be on a board, and they started having a board conversation. I want you to be ready at all times, even when you're wearing your hiking gear, to have this conversation. So being prepared in all 4 parts, your 5-second elevator pitch, the 3 things you bring to boards, to be able to talk about your board experience and your values, it means that you're ready at all times to have a really meaningful conversation and take action, right? Because you could be at a wedding and sitting next to someone who runs a major firm and you want to talk to them about your board career. You want to be ready. So I would say prepare all of those things, be ready to have the conversation, but don't feel like it needs to be rehearsed in any way, but you need to know what your story is.